I'm 87 years old, and I just realized I've been looking for meaning in all the wrong places. My name is Harold, and last week I had a conversation that changed how I see everything I've done with my life. It started with a simple question from my 16-year-old great-niece Emma, who was visiting me for the weekend. We were sitting on my front porch watching the sunset when she suddenly asked, "Uncle Harold, do you think your life mattered?" The question caught me off guard. Not because it was rude. Emma has always been thoughtful, curious about big ideas, but because I realized I didn't have a clear answer. I'm 87 years old. I've lived through the Korean War, raised 3 kids, worked for 43 years at the same insurance company, been married to the same woman for 62 years until she passed 5 years ago. By most measures, I've had a full life. But did it matter? For most of my adult life, I believe mattering meant making a mark, achieving something significant, being remembered. I spent decades chasing recognition, promotions, achievements that would prove my life had meaning. I wanted to be the top salesman, the guy everyone remembered, the one who made a real impact. Emma's question sent me into a deep reflection that lasted the entire week after she left. And what I discovered surprised me more than anything I've learned in nearly 9 decades of living. Let me tell you about a Tuesday afternoon in March of 1978. I was 41 years old, driving home from work through downtown Chicago. It was a miserable day, cold, raining, the kind of weather that makes everyone walk faster with their heads down. I was stopped at a red light when I saw an elderly man struggling with his groceries on the sidewalk. His paper bag had torn, and canned goods were rolling into the street. I had 2 choices. I could sit in my warm car and wait for the light to change, or I could pull over and help. I was tired, I was hungry. I had my own problems to worry about. But something made me pull over. I helped the man gather his groceries, drove him the 6 blocks to his apartment, and carried the bags upstairs for him. His name was Frank Kowalski. He was 73, a widower living alone. He thanked me profusely, offered me coffee, but I was in a hurry to get home. The whole interaction took maybe 15 minutes of my life. I forgot about it almost immediately. It was such a small thing. Anyone would have done the same, I told myself. But last week, while going through some old papers after Emma's visit, I found a letter I'd never seen before. It was tucked inside a book my wife Helen had kept on her nightstand. The letter was from Frank's daughter, dated 6 months after that rainy day. It was addressed to Helen, not to me. In careful handwriting she wrote, "Dear Mrs. Patterson, I hope you don't mind me writing to you, but I had to find a way to thank your husband. 6 months ago, he helped my father on Michigan Avenue when his groceries spilled. It might seem like a small thing to you, but it meant the world to Dad. You see, that was the day he had decided to give up. He was coming home from what he planned to be his last grocery trip. He had made peace with ending his life that evening. But your husband's kindness, his willingness to stop and help a stranger, reminded Dad that there was still good in the world, still people who cared." Dad lived 3 more years after that day, 3 years of joy with his grandchildren, 3 years I almost didn't get. I wanted you to know that your husband didn't just help with groceries that day, he saved a life. I sat on my kitchen floor, holding that letter, crying for the first time since Helen's funeral. Frank Kowalski. I had saved a man's life and never knew it. For 45 years I've been measuring my significance by promotions I got, deals I closed, recognition I received. But the most important thing I ever did was stop my car on a rainy Tuesday and help a stranger pick up his groceries. This discovery led me to start really thinking about all the moments in my life that I had dismissed as insignificant. And I realized my whole understanding of what it means to matter has been completely wrong. Take my daughter Susan. When she was 8 years old, she went through a phase where she was convinced she was bad at everything. She came home from school one day in tears because she had gotten a C on a spelling test. All her friends had gotten A's and B's, and she felt stupid. I remember sitting with her at the kitchen table that evening, looking at her test. Instead of focusing on the words she got wrong, I pointed out every word she got right. "Susan, look at this. You spelled beautiful perfectly. That's one of the hardest words in the English language. And look here, necessary. Most adults can't spell that word." I spent 20 minutes going through every correct answer, celebrating each one. I thought I was just being a good dad, cheering up my kid after a bad day. But 30 years later, at Susan's college graduation, she pulled me aside and said, "Dad, do you remember that spelling test when I was 8? The way you celebrated every word I got right instead of focusing on my mistakes. That moment changed how I see myself. Instead of thinking I'm bad at things, I learned to notice what I'm good at. It shaped my entire approach to challenges." Susan is now a teacher. She told me she uses the same approach with her students, focusing on what they do well, celebrating small victories. She's been teaching for 25 years. That's thousands of children who have benefited from a parenting moment I thought was routine, unremarkable, easily forgotten. Or consider my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. For 15 years, from 1985 to 2000, I shoveled her driveway every time it snowed. She was a widow, probably in her 70s, and I figured it was just being neighborly. It took me an extra 10 minutes whenever I was already shoveling my own driveway. I never thought much of it. After she passed away in 2000, her son came to thank me. He told me his mother had talked about me constantly in her final years. She would call him every time it snowed, just to tell him about Harold who clears my driveway. She said it made her feel cared for, not forgotten, like someone was looking out for her. Her son said those small acts of kindness were what kept her feeling connected to her community, kept her from feeling invisible in her old age. 15 years of 10-minute snow removal sessions. I was just being practical. I was already out there with the shovel anyway. But to Mrs. Chen, it was proof that she mattered, that someone saw her and cared about her well-being. The pattern kept emerging as I reflected on my life. The things I thought were significant, my Employee of the Month awards, my sales records, the company recognition dinners. Those moments felt important to me at the time, but they didn't actually change anyone's life. The things that really mattered were the moments I almost didn't notice, like the time I was at the grocery store in 1992, and the teenager at the checkout counter was clearly having a terrible day. She was moving slowly, kept making mistakes with the register, looked like she was about to cry. The customers ahead of me were getting impatient, making comments under their breath. When it was my turn, I smiled at her and said, "Rough day, huh? We all have them. You're doing fine." She looked up at me with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're the first person today who's been nice to me." I found out years later, through a mutual acquaintance, that the girl, her name was Jennifer, had been going through her parents' divorce, struggling in school, dealing with depression. She told someone that the kind words from a stranger at the grocery store came at exactly the moment she needed to hear them. She said it reminded her that not everyone in the world was angry or impatient, that kindness still existed. Jennifer is now a social worker, helping teenagers through difficult situations. She credits that grocery store moment as part of what inspired her career path. A 30-second interaction that I forgot about immediately has rippled out into decades of her helping other young people. This is what I've learned at 87. The things that actually matter in life are almost never the things that feel significant when they're happening. Real significance is quiet, personal, often unnoticed. It happens in the space between people, in moments of connection, in small acts of care and attention. I spent most of my life trying to matter in big, obvious ways. I wanted to be the best insurance salesman in the region. I wanted recognition, awards, my name on plaques. I wanted to leave a legacy that people would remember and talk about. But the real legacy was being built in moments I didn't even recognize as important. My grandson David, now 28, recently told me about a fishing trip we took when he was 12. I barely remember it. Just a Saturday afternoon at a local pond, probably caught 2 or 3 small fish. But David said it was one of his favorite childhood memories. Not because of the fish we caught, but because for 4 hours I gave him my complete attention. No phone calls, no distractions, just him and me talking about everything and nothing. He said that trip made him feel important, valued, like his thoughts and questions mattered to an adult. He carried that feeling of being worthy of attention and respect into his adult relationships. Now he's a father himself, and he makes sure to give his children the same kind of focused, undivided attention. What I thought was just a pleasant afternoon with my grandson has become a multi-generational pattern of intentional parenting and connection. Here's the paradox I've discovered. The more you chase significance, the less significant your life becomes. The more you focus on being remembered, the less memorable you actually are. Real meaning comes from the opposite direction, from focusing not on your own importance, but on the people right in front of you. My wife Helen understood this better than I did. She never tried to be remarkable or impressive. She just paid attention to people. She remembered birthdays, asked about sick relatives, noticed when someone got a haircut. She wrote thank you notes, brought casseroles to new neighbors, visited friends in the hospital. Nothing she did would have made headlines, but her funeral was standing room only because hundreds of people had been touched by her small, consistent acts of care. After Helen died, I found boxes of letters and cards from people, thanking her for various kindnesses over the years. A co-worker thanked her for bringing lunch when she couldn't afford to buy her own. A neighbor thanked her for watching her kids when she had to rush to the emergency room. A church member thanked her for sitting with her during her husband's surgery. Helen never told me about most of these interactions. To her, they weren't special or noteworthy. They were just life, paying attention to the people around you and responding to their needs when you could. But reading those letters, I understood that Helen's life was profoundly significant, precisely because she never tried to be significant. She just tried to be present, kind, and helpful. The impact was enormous, but it was built one small interaction at a time. This brings me back to Emma's question. Do you think your life mattered? The answer is yes, but not in the ways I spent most of my life thinking about. My life mattered in Tuesday afternoon grocery rescues, in spelling test encouragements, in shoveled driveways and patient grocery store interactions. It mattered in fishing trips and porch conversations, and all the small moments where I chose to pay attention, to be kind, to show up for other people. I wish I had understood this when I was younger. I wish I had spent less energy chasing recognition and more energy noticing opportunities to connect with people. I wish I had realized that every interaction is a chance to matter to someone, to make their day a little better, to remind them that they're seen and valued. But I'm grateful I understand it now. At 87, I still have opportunities to matter in small ways. I can still listen to my great-niece's questions and take them seriously. I can still smile at checkout clerks and remember servers' names. I can still shovel a neighbor's driveway or help someone carry groceries. The beautiful thing about this kind of significance is that it's available to everyone. You don't need special talents or resources or opportunities. You just need to pay attention to the people around you and respond with kindness when you can. Your life doesn't have to be extraordinary to matter extraordinarily. In fact, it's often the most ordinary acts, helping, listening, showing up, being patient, that end up mattering most. So when someone asks you if your life matters, the answer isn't found in your achievements or accomplishments. It's found in the moments when you chose connection over convenience, kindness over indifference, presence over productivity. It's found in all the small ways you've reminded other people that they matter. Because that, ultimately, is what makes a life significant. Not what you achieve for yourself, but what you gave to others, often without even realizing you were giving it. Those moments add up. They ripple out in ways you'll never fully understand, and they matter more than you know.